Hey everyone, welcome to the results video of our 6th mini contest, the Junior Coaster contest. In this contest everybody had to build a junior coaster. And there were also some other requirements. The ride length was not allowed to be more than 400 meters. And the highest drop height was only allowed to be 7 meters. And the reason these rules were in place because normal junior coasters really aren't very long. They usually have a short track with multiple circuits. And also their drop heights aren't very high, because of course they're supposed to be for kids. So I didn't want to see any murder machines or any too intense stuff, so that's why these rules were in place. I think it also leads to better layouts for the junior coasters. And one other rule that I also added was that players were also allowed to use the mine trains, as you can see here. Anyway, there were 48 completed entries, so I will start with the one that got last place, and then finally I'll end with the winner of the round. Okay, here in last place, we have an entry here that got disqualified. So this entry was from a plumnehs, and as it turns out, this was actually a collaboration between Mulpie and Shen Kitchen. Also, if you reverse the name, it actually says Shen Mulpie. Anyway, for these contests, players are supposed to do them on their own, so that's why I chose not to accept this entry. So they actually put some hints in previous contest entries about their real names. So yeah, it was actually really funny when I found out about this. But yeah, I have to say, you can clearly see the influences from Shen and from Mulpie. Of course, there's this tree, which Mulpie likes to do. And there's of course these paths with the railings, like Shen likes to do. This is actually quite a funny entry. And this cat is obviously based on the cat that I once made for one of the multiplayer rounds, where every player had to decorate a vertical drop roller coaster. But yeah, it was quite funny that they kept up this, that they had this fake account for so long. Anyway, time to move on to the next entry. Okay, here we have the entry from Soap and Butter Sandwich. So he made this big junior coaster here with an enormous station. I actually kind of like the station building. Also the little buildings here, they're nice. I'm not really sure about the layout of the junior coaster, because it has these very wide turns. And usually these junior coasters are made to fit in a small space. So usually you will see tight helixes, stuff like that. So yeah, this layout being so spread out, probably not the best choice. Also, it's quite a unique choice here in that he actually decided to go for a chain lift or a lift hill here at the end. I'm also not really sure if that's the best choice, but I do think it works for this layout. Now, there were some slight issues here. For example, here in the building you can see these pillars. They're okay, but they're only really in the right place from one angle. For example, this pillar, I'm pretty sure it had to be placed here. Also here for this sign, this pillar, I think this one's on the edge, and this one is right here in the middle of the sign. So also if we look at the pillars from this angle, then it looks like it is in the correct location. So it's always a good choice to when you've built something, to look at it from different angles, just to make sure you're not fooled by the isometric perspective of the game. Now, when you put a park entrance like this, it's usually a good idea to actually hide it, or to extend these fences that are here on the side. So right now these fences here, they just stop abruptly. Not sure if that's the best idea. But yeah, overall I don't think this is a bad entry. It just could have been a lot better. Okay, here we have the entry from Seer. He made this blue junior coaster. Now I must say I do like the supports on this. They're quite nice. So yeah, he used some wooden pole fences with these wooden posts. So yeah, at least the supports are quite nice. There were some strange design choices here. For example, you can see this snake traveling through this, through this plot of land under the coaster. This should have probably been done a little bit more carefully, because it travels through the supports and through the track all the time. So yeah, not sure if that's really a good idea. It probably should have moved around the supports rather than through them. Yeah, I also saw some comments about people not really liking the tall grass here. Other than that, the park is really crowded here. And yeah, I also didn't really understand these employees just walking around here in the grass. So yeah, again, just like the previous one, I think it could have been a lot nicer if it just had been done a little bit more carefully. Because right now, in some spaces, it just looks a little bit messy. Also, when you make a coaster, it's usually a good idea to leave them at least a little bit off the ground. That way, you're always sure that supports are drawn for the coaster. In my opinion, that just makes your coaster look a lot nicer. Okay, here's the entry from Nelis. He made this really wide junior coaster that travels around these trees. I think the idea of these trees is pretty nice. But yeah, I think the execution of these trees could have been quite a bit better than how it is now. For example, these tree roots, it kind of looks a little bit unnatural because they all extend to the side like this. Probably would have looked much nicer if it also had a few of these roots extend to the front. Again, the park here is really crowded. That's yeah, there's 104 guests on this little plot of land. I think it usually looks better if your guests can walk around more freely on your map. Right now it just looks like an ant colony walking around here. Yeah, as for the landscaping, yeah, to be honest, I think the landscaping also could have had some improvements. For example, it could have used some water or some different textures. Yeah, just some more interesting things to look at. Just grass with some stuff planted in it here and there. Yeah, I don't know. I think it could have been much more interesting. As for the layout of the junior coaster, yeah, it's wait, there's a lift hill here, then there's a curve downwards, a wide helix here, and then goes down again here. I think a junior coaster layout looks much nicer if it travels over itself a few times. Just have a few more crossings. It's also what you usually see in real junior coasters. I think it just makes them look more interesting. Alright, here's the entry from Savvy Adam. He made this big pier with the a small junior coaster on top that does 2 circuits. Now, first off, I'm really a big fan of this this area over here. This covering for this eating area. That looks really good. I really like. This is really my favorite part of the entry. That looks really nice. But yeah, I wish the rest of the entry had gotten the same treatment as these buildings, because these little buildings, they look pretty bland in comparison to this building. As for the junior coaster, yeah, it is pretty compact, but yeah, it's also very short. It probably would have been nicer if it was a little bit longer. He had the space, so he could probably extended it a bit with an extra helix or something. It's something nice, and probably it would have. It's usually a good idea to also give your coaster a station, or a station building, I mean. For the landscaping, I do like this little area over here. But yeah, when you make a waterfront, it's usually not a good idea to make it completely straight. When it's a little bit more irregular, it's generally a lot more interesting to look at. Alright, next up is the entry from Risiko. He said I should decide for myself whether I would accept this entry or not. But yeah, this is a recreation of the Mitten roller coaster from SpongeBob SquarePants. I believe it's in Glove World at Rock Bottom. So yeah, he recreated that coaster. Of course, it's a really simple roller coaster with just a little lift hill and a drop. So yeah, this was a really silly recreation, but I actually quite liked it. Of course, yeah, people rated this entry very high for the landscaping, but very low for the coaster. Because yeah, even for a junior coaster, this is not very impressive. Let me quickly disable the rain. Okay, but yeah, I really love the landscaping that he did, the scenery, this Mitten sign, it looks incredible. I even love the balloons that he used. Sadly, they're not glove shaped, but I can forgive him for that. Also, here's the entrance to Glove World and the fiery fist of pain, which is a brutal roller coaster. You may have seen the episode. So here, of course, there's a big SpongeBob recreation. I like how we used the hardline twisted track to make it look like he's, to make him look more like a sponge. So yeah, this is of course fantastic work. So yeah, as you could expect for this entry, really low scores for the coasters, but really high scores for the scenery, and combined they give this score that this entry had. I believe it was around 6.0. So yeah, I think that that was to be expected. Okay, here's an entry from ewinter. Now, what I really liked in this entry was actually that he used the custom news message feature to give the story to all the people who view the park. Yeah, I think this is a really great feature that was added to Open Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. There were also trainers which could do this before the era of Open Roller Coaster Tycoon 2. But it's nice to see it make a comeback. Now, also, I really like the snow in this entry. This entry was made to look like it was in a snow globe. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Also, the trees around it, that's also nice. There are some nice things here, like a snowman, these candy canes. I believe these are hot tubs. Sadly, no guests are using them, as far as I can see. But it's a nice idea, kind of like what I did in my Mega Park. Now, as for the junior coaster, the layout, I'm not really sure about it. For example, it does a full spiral upwards here. And also when you open the entry, it doesn't have its stats tested yet. So barely any guests will ride it. So when you save your park, it's usually a good idea that your ride already has stats, because it's usually not a good idea to have your coaster run with empty trains, when people will only probably look at your entry for quite a short time before they give the rating. But yeah, there are some nice buildings here. As I said, for the junior coaster, yeah, it does a full spiral upwards here. Usually junior coasters only do like one curve upwards and then the rest of the track. But yeah, this also means that it's very high when it's up here. Then it spirals down, and then here it has a huge speed. So yeah, I don't think the layout is very junior coaster like. So that's probably what would have increased the score the most. A nicer layout. But overall, I think it's very creative and also great usage of the custom news messages. Okay, here's the entry from PianoDan. He made this little junior coaster here on a hillside. Now, I must say I like the way this junior coaster is situated here on the hill. Also, these buildings here and these plants, I think they look, yeah, they look quite nice. As for the junior coaster layout, I'm not really sure if it was a clever idea to finish the layout with a lift hill. I prefer to see those at the beginning, especially since he actually does a little bit of a drop here right before the station. I don't really think that makes much sense. But yeah, other than that, it's just some simple but nice landscaping. It looks like he buried some trees. I like it when people do that. So yeah, it's just a nice and simple entry. I don't really have much more to say about it. Nice job. Okay, here's the entry from Darkoro. Darkoro made this brown coaster, also in a brown landscape with brown buildings. Yeah, it's usually a good idea to not make everything brown in your entries when you make one for a contest. The coaster tends to blend into the landscape a bit. And it's usually nicer to have some nice colors in your entry as well. Of course, there's some blue accents here with these flowers, so that is a good thing. As for the layout of the coaster, well, yeah, it has this lift hill here, and then on top of the lift hill there's quite a long flat section before it finally does the curved turn downwards. Oh wait, it actually does a little bit of a drop here, it looks like. But yeah, for the rest of the landscaping, yeah, it's mostly just different kinds of trees. When you place trees like this, it will usually look better if you make little clusters of trees with plants around it. That will generally look better than spacing out your trees like this. But yeah, overall, this is not a bad entry. I especially like these little buildings here. They look quite good. Okay, here's the entry from Mekkit. Now, you might be wondering why this entry scored so low, but we actually had a rule that the only opened ride in the entry could be the junior coaster. And this one actually also had a Ferris wheel. I probably also should have checked this entry better, but oh well, it is what it is. So that's why I sadly had to give this entry a 1 point penalty. So that's why this entry scored so low. Yeah, there's some lovely buildings here, like this station building and the McDenny's. These buildings look really nice. I also love the surroundings of the coaster. And the layout, I think it's also really good. This is what a junior coaster is supposed to look like. Now, yeah, I actually rated this entry pretty highly. But I read through the reviews from people, and many people complained that there was too much path. And probably some people also gave a lower score because of the Ferris wheel. Sadly, it's always like that when someone doesn't follow the rules. In the end, I will usually give a penalty, but some people will also rate an entry a little bit lower because of not following the rules. So it's kind of a double whammy. Oh well, not much we can do about that. But yeah, like I said, this was one of my favorite entries. But in the end, it didn't score well, mostly because of the penalty. So that's a shame. But still, lovely work from Mekkit once again. Okay, here's the entry from Manticore 007. He made this, what's it called, a termite mount. So also this coaster called Queen Slug for a butt. I think that's a really funny name. And the station of the coaster is actually inside this termite mount, which is made using these red rocks and these termite mount scenery pieces. Yeah, I think the landscape in this entry is pretty cool. Although it is very brown once again. It might have looked better with some different colors mixed into it. But yeah, landscaping is quite simple. Just some trees here, some bushes. I do like the variety in the ground textures and also stuff like the little waterfall and the little lake here. The layout of the coaster, yeah, very simple. I would have liked to see some more like curved hills, stuff like that, rather than just these helixes. I do think it's quite cool to see someone do such a long train. Some junior coasters have really long trains in their layouts. So yeah, I think this is not a bad entry, but I think it could have been a little bit more spectacular. Alright, here's the entry from QDude24. Now, first off, I think it's a little bit too crowded in the park. There's 340 people on this quite small area of land, and it just shows on the path. It's really crowded. So yeah, when you make an entry like this, it's usually a good idea to just limit the number of guests a bit. One thing that really helps for that is this explode cheat. And when I click it, some of the guests will voluntarily leave the park. So I think this already makes it a little bit nicer to look at. One thing I really liked was this building. I think it looks really cool. Has a nice shape and lots of windows, some nice layering as well. So that's pretty good. What I didn't really like was the layout of this junior coaster. It goes upwards here, then it goes down into a wide spiral, and then to a tight spiral, and then back to the station. It's probably better to switch up the order of those. So first do the tight helix when it's going slow, and then a wider helix when it's when it's going faster. But yeah, rather than that, probably it would have been nicer if it did some more stuff rather than just left-hand turns. That's usually also a good thing to keep into account. To do some left turns, but also do some right turns in your layout. This one only turns left. But yeah, other than that, there were also some nice details. There's I think it's a cat and a mouse, and here's some horses. So yeah, it had some really funny details. So that's good. Alright, here's the entry from Daytona96 HP. He made Mos Eisley. I believe it's from the Star Wars series. Yeah, also in the last contest we also got a Star Wars entry from Daytona96 HP. So I like seeing those. It's a nice universe to recreate stuff from. Now he made this junior coaster which sits here in the corner. Sadly, it's another one of those NASCAR coasters, because this one only turns right in its layout. It is nicely tucked away here in the corner. Does two circuits. But yeah, these layouts usually get much more interesting if you also make it turn the other direction a few times. Now, as for these buildings, I kind of like them. It's definitely an interesting map to look at. I also like how he made this Millennium Falcon in the sky. It's pretty well done on this small scale. So yeah, for sure this is an interesting entry, but the layout of the coaster could have probably been a little bit better. Okay, here we have the entry from noobiestnoob. Now, people who have watched my Mount Dirklink series so far will probably recognize some of these buildings, because this looks a lot like the ice cream cinema that I made. Also the junior coaster. Yeah, I also made a junior coaster in Mount Dirklink. I believe it has these exact same colors. Of course, the layout of mine was completely different. And also it has this station building, which I copied from Jens. But yeah, I think these buildings are actually executed quite well. Yeah, it's clear to see where he got the inspiration for those. There's also some snowmen on the roof here. He probably should have given them a name though. It's quite boring to see them just being called Entertainer 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. This building is probably from the Round Earth Society. Yep, looks like it. If we do the cutaway view, we'll probably find a rocket inside. There it is. So yeah, interesting entry for sure, and not difficult to see where he got the inspiration for it. Okay, here we have the entry from Joseph Stalin. Now, I really like the station for this coaster. I also really enjoy the flags here, all the foliage that he put. That's yeah, that's pretty nice. Also like the colors for the junior coaster, nice and bright. And yeah, I think it also has a nice layout. It's the curved drop here into a helix, and then it does a tight turn around here. And then after that it returns back to the station. And it travels through this landscape with the bamboo and these cherry blossom trees. Now, yeah, one complaint that I saw quite a lot was that he didn't name any of his track and texture. Yeah, you can get away with that, but for example, this boat here is called Unknown Ride 38-1. I'm not really sure if that's a good name for any of your rides, really. Also, he has some pandas walking around here, and they also are all simply named Entertainer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So yeah, it's these are small things, but they will. Yeah, when you name stuff like that, it will simply make your park look a little bit more finished, a little bit less lazy, let's call it that. Okay, here's the entry from 6 Shuckles. 6 Shuckles made this blue or cyan roller coaster here, which travels through this landscape, also with this dragon here in the middle. Now, I really like the way this dragon is done. That looks pretty cool. Also this station building, I really like the red floor in it. Also the gongs as decoration. Also like the roof. So this building looks pretty good. The biggest complaint I had about this entry was how the trees were done. So as you can see, there's 3 here, then there's a space in between, then there's another 3 here. Here's a space in between again, then 3 space, etc, etc. And that's quite consistent throughout the entry. It's usually better to clump some trees together, just put some bushes around it, just make it look like little clusters of trees. Just have some areas where it's more dense. That will generally look much nicer. Also, it's usually a good idea to choose like maybe 4 or 5 different trees and just stick with those in an area. I don't know how many different kinds of trees were used here, but it's a lot of different ones. And it just doesn't make your entry look very consistent. So yeah, that's probably the area where this entry could have been improved the most. Okay, here we have the entry from Ricardowordo. He made this little junior coaster here. Yeah, in between all these colorful gardens. Now, I must say I kind of like the way these gardens look. Yeah, they look nice in the landscape, and I'm sure it would have looked beautiful to walk around here in real life. I also really like how he did this giraffe statue here, making it look like he is buried in the flower gardens. Also, I think this is an interesting looking station building. It's pretty good. Now, the name for the coaster, Junior. I don't really know about the name. Now, I think it all looks quite nice. Oh, I also really like this handyman sitting here in the boat. That's quite funny. Now, my biggest complaint about this entry was actually the start. So there's a lift hill going up here, and then the coaster really crawls over this dip here before finally it gets started here. So yeah, I'm not sure if this was a good choice. Probably he should have just gone down here with a curved drop into a helix, something like that. And maybe this layout is also a little bit too wide. But I must say it fits here nicely in the landscape. And I also think the water here looks really nice. Yeah, and what I probably like most in this entry is how we did the trees here. They're really nice and dense. I think this area looks really good. Okay, this is the entry made by Jazzanden. Now, this is a really good entry, I think. I love how consistent the theme is throughout. Some really nice Roman structures, really nice fountains. I actually love this combination of these lions with these little fountains. I believe this is probably a water splash here. Very unusual on a junior coaster, but it looks pretty good. I also really like how for this Colosseum he actually moved up some of the parts of it. So I probably did that with the Tile Inspector, but I think it looks really good. Also you can see a statue, well, some statues here, like a Roman warrior with the horse in front, and then some of these cog wheels to make it look like he's on a carriage. Some temples here. Even Ducklink the observer in the park. So yeah, also I really love the trees. So yeah, I think this was a really good entry. Yeah, not really much much else to say about it. I just like everything that I can see here. Also this sign here. This sign looks really good. I can really recommend all players to make really nice signs for their coasters, because they can greatly enhance the way your area looks. So yeah, fantastic work. Okay, here's the entry from Erwin. Erwin made a junior coaster that's a combination of a dark ride and a junior coaster. So first, when it comes out of the station, it will actually travel here through this what is it? The Happy Botanics. So it's probably like a greenhouse with a ton of trees inside. So yeah, I think that's a pretty fun idea. And then after that, it travels through the station again, and then it does sort of a little bit of a launch up this lift hill, and then it travels through the rest of the layout. Now, I think this is a really cool idea. What I didn't really like is that, it's called Happy Botanics, but the area here is very brown. I think it would have probably looked a little bit better if it was more green, or if it had some more color around it. Maybe some extra flowers, I don't know. And also here, yeah, some weird stuff is happening here. You can see it if I drag the window over it. So yeah, what's the issue here is he actually tried to hide the park fences here by actually just removing the land tile. That's not how you should do that. Let me see if I can make this work. So yeah, there's a surface tile here, and he tried to hide the park fence by making the surface tile invisible. So now you can see the park fences here. But what you should do is click the surface and then do remove park fences. And that's how you remove the park fences from your park. It's really simple, and that's definitely better than making the entire surface tile disappear. Okay, here's the entry from Pheen. I really like the layout of this coaster. So it travels up here, goes through a twisty, curvy layout. Also, I kind of like the way she did these supports. I like these supports that sit here in the middle, and also the ones here at the floor. Not really sure if these are necessary, because I think it looks just as fine without them. But yeah, it's a design choice. Now, Pheen made this entry in 1 hour. I think it does show in several places. Now, I really like the way this foliage is done. These trees, they look really nice. But yeah, what I thought was a little bit strange was these buildings that are right next to the coaster. Especially since the front doors are so high off the ground. I'm not really sure how people would get into these buildings. So yeah, it's a nice entry, but it does show in some spots that it may have been a little bit rushed. Okay, here's the entry from Robby Hood. He actually made this coaster, and as you can see here, these coaster trains are quite far apart. We also used custom messages here to make a message that says your Discord has received an award for the server with the best community. I fully agree with that. Now, these coaster cars, he spaced them apart. I don't know what he did to do that. Maybe he used a shoestring, or maybe he used an external program like Microsoft Visual Studio. That's how I would increase the spacing. But nonetheless, I think it's a cool idea. The story was something that in order to allow people to sit in a coaster train with like 1.5 meters distance between them. That's the reason they are spaced so far apart. But yeah, however he did it, I think it's a neat trick. Also some really nice decorations around here. Some nice supports as well for the coaster. I kind of like the combination with the wooden coaster track. Now, not really sure if it's a good idea to just cover the entire map around with flowers, but it does at least give it a very unique appearance. Okay, here's the entry from TerrorHenk. Now, he actually recreated a Dutch coaster called Donderstenen. It's in the park Hellendoorn in the east of the Netherlands. Now, I've actually ridden this coaster. I think it's a pretty accurate recreation. You may be thinking it's too bright, the green, but it actually got a new paint job this year, so that's the reason it's so bright now. So yeah, he also recreated parts of the path around it. Now, in the real Donderstenen, the paths, they're littered with big rocks, so that's he used these rocks from one of the expansion to recreate that effect. Not really sure how well that's done, since they're quite glitchy here. I do like how he did these trees here. Also these supports, I think they're pretty interesting. So yeah, I think it's some nice landscaping here. I think it's a really good recreation of this small Dutch kiddie coaster. Okay, here's the entry from fauxtopia. Fauxtopia made this coaster here on Dirklink Island. It's invite only. That's quite funny. So yeah, the coaster travels up here. It sits in this half of the map. Then here it travels above the water on these on top of these supports. I think these supports are a pretty cool idea. Although some of the supports look like they're right next to these supports instead of on top of them. So that's a shame. But overall, it does look quite nice. I also love the buildings around here and the landscaping. This especially the landscaping here is done really well. Also with some buried trees and stuff, some nice plants in between. It looks very tropical, so the atmosphere here is really nice. Now personally, what I did not really like about this coaster was that it has quite a few straight parts. So you can see a straight part right here. There's also a straight part here. So those are probably best avoided. Just it generally looks nicer if your coaster is curvy throughout. So yeah, usually you can just try extending the hill a little bit or doing the curve a little bit earlier. But yeah, I think it generally looks nicer that way. Now, another slight issue I had with this map was that the guests are all walking around here and they can reach this area over here, but they're not able to find their way out anymore. So if we fast forward the map for a few years, all the guests will eventually be trapped here inside this area. So it's always a bit tricky to play with these seating areas. Sometimes you'll have to connect some of the paths in order to allow the guests to actually be able to do their path finding. But yeah, like I said, I really like the atmosphere in this map. This looks really nice. Okay, here's the entry from Birion. Now I'm not sure if it was supposed to be raining, but that's the way he submitted it to me. Now, I must say I really like the color of this coaster. I mean, it's brown, but also mixed with red. I think it looks really nice together with these buildings, so with the gray roofs. Now, I think the foliage around here is also done in a nice way. And the palette, I think the palette adds to a nice atmosphere. So here you can also see a station here, the way I like to make them, just quick and simple, but quite effective. Some nice decorations here as well. Here's Mine Worker Henk and Mine Worker John. Now, one thing I did not really like was these pine trees that sit on top of these gardens. I think this looks a little bit strange, since the way they're planted now, it looks like they're really on the corner of these gardens here. I think when you have pine trees, it's better to just place them on the ground and don't put gardens below it. They probably wouldn't survive, and it just looks a little bit off. But in general, I think this is a pretty good entry. Okay, here we have the entry from SupraNormaal. Now he made this coaster over here in it looks like an African area. It's called World Tour. Now, to be honest, I'm not really sure if it's a good idea to have kangaroos, zebras, and pandas in the same area. But of course, it is a world tour, so it's probably meant to represent animals from all over the world. But to be fair, I generally, for your coaster, I think it's generally a better idea to use animals from one area of the world. For example, savannah. I think it looks nicer if it's more consistent. But I must say that I really like the way the landscaping is done here. It looks really nice and tropical. I really like the way the trees are done here. They look nice and dense. As for the decorations here, there might be a little bit too many benches here. Just bins, benches, bins, etc. When you place these on your paths, in my opinion, it looks nicer when there's a bit fewer of them. And it might also be nice to replace some of them with lamps like this, or other lamps. These ones usually also look good. But yeah, those are just minor things. All in all, I think this was a really nice entry with a really nice atmosphere as well. Okay, here we have the entry from Shen Kitchen. Shen Kitchen actually recreated the Santa Monica West Coaster, which is actually a Morgan, a small Morgan coaster. But Shen recreated it as a junior roller coaster. Now, I actually really liked this entry. I scored it a bit higher than most other people. But yeah, this is where it has ended up eventually. Now, one thing that I think is a little bit finicky is this unbanked turn here at the end. I mean, this probably would have been better as a banked turn, because it goes, this is where the coaster goes the fastest in this layout. So I don't really understand why this turn is unbanked. Probably would be quite uncomfortable. But for the rest, yeah, I really enjoy the way this pier looks. I love the support structure for it. I believe it's a mix between, yeah, this looks like a mine train coaster supports, and even signs are used for supports here. It's pretty cool. Also some other rides here on the pier, like this Ferris wheel. I also really like how these dodgems were actually used to make a little restaurant here. So yeah, there's lots of cool little tricks used here. Here's a pizza place called the Kali Zone. You can also see the cooks working here. So yeah, I really enjoyed this entry, but yeah, this last unbanked turn here, that's a bit of a weird design choice. Of course, this coaster also only does left turns, but here I can excuse it because it's a recreation of a real coaster which does exactly the same thing. Alright, here's the entry from Geoff. Now, he had quite an interesting story. It was about a little place that got an unwanted visitor. This is probably the one he mentioned. He's called Devil Dirkling. And there's lots of angels here in the clouds. And they're probably here to fight this guy in the clouds. Now, there are lots of candy here on the clouds and a coaster called Baby Snatcher. So yeah, I really enjoy this coaster. It's an interesting color scheme for the trains. Also interesting layout. Also, although quite a part of it is obscured by these clouds. I particularly enjoy this turnaround here on the water, where it travels around this fountain. Now, lots of entertainers here on the clouds. Lots of people were included in it. That's always a good idea when you include the people that in the end will have to give your entry a rating. But yeah, as you look around, just really nice looking little buildings here. Nice landscaping. I really enjoy his style. Okay, here we have the entry from Ulvenwood. He actually made an entry. Well, yeah, obviously it's in the snow. Yeah, I think this looks really nice. I really like the way this junior coaster looks. It pops in and out of these buildings here, in and out of the landscape. It's nice and compact. And I actually think the colors contrast nicely with the surrounding landscape. Very interesting palette usage, where actually some of the greens were turned into white. I think these it makes these bulrushes look pretty cool. Now you can also see some other interesting stuff here. For example, here you can see I think this is a building for the Jamaican bobsled team. Yeah, it actually has a track in the Jamaican colors and also a station building. So yeah, also very interesting scenery here throughout. I love the way these buildings look, and also here at the entrance you can see these mazes with flowers in them which spell out the word Ice World. There's also some spa whirlpools here. So yeah, there's lots of interesting, cool little details here. And yeah, just filling your entry with details will usually help you score pretty well. Okay, here we have the entry from Maxa. Now, he loves making huge structures, and this round was no exception. He made this huge building called Hotel Bahama. It consists of many different towers, many different building parts. I love all the different layers that he made, all the different vertical layers. There's lots of interesting design choices here in the building, and of course I also like how the junior coaster travels in and out of the building. Although it does make it quite hard to follow throughout the layout. Now let's see if there's some stuff to see using cutaway view. I like how you can see the paths down here. But yeah, just lots of interesting little details everywhere you look. So nice color usage here as well. Although I think it might have been even better if there were some more secondary colors that popped out. Because right now I do think the building looks very brown. But overall, I really like the way this building looks. It's a very impressive building. Okay, here's the entry from Mulpie. Now, the coaster might be a little bit difficult to see, but it's actually here. It's easier to follow if we turn off the scenery. Now, it is one of those coasters that only does right-hand turns. So that's again something that's best avoided. But I do really like how it circles around these trees. And the station for this coaster, I think it looks fantastic. Also this, I really like these buildings that Mulpie puts right next to the entrance. These towers look really great with this, with these castle walls and these graveyard monuments on top. Also framed by these mushrooms. So yeah, once again, it's beautiful landscaping from Mulpie, and this coaster, I think it's worked into the landscaping, into the landscape really well. I also really like the waterfall behind it. The only thing I'm not really sure about is how he made these mushrooms. I've seen people do mushrooms in better ways, but at least they are recognizable as mushrooms. But yeah, you can just look around, and I think the foliage here is done in a really nice way. Although I'm not really sure about these expansion cacti, because they really look like they're made of plastic. But yeah, overall superb landscaping. Junior Coaster probably would have been better if it didn't just do right-hand turns. Okay, here's the entry from Zarathustra. I see the park has just received an award for being the park with the best rides for the kids in the country. That's totally not a custom message. Now, this coaster travels around these trees. I think these trees are very well done. It actually uses these giant trees from the expansions with the weird light green on the bottom. Not really sure what that's supposed to represent, but in some way I do think that actually looks quite good here, the way he used it. So yeah, the station for the coaster, it kind of looks like a tree house. That's probably also why the coaster is called Tree House. I like the color for the coaster. It's red, which contrasts nicely with the green that's all around it. There's lots of beautiful trees and plants surrounding the coaster. So mixed with some mushrooms and some purple flowers to add some extra contrast. So a really nice log cabin here. So yeah, I think this is again an entry with some beautiful landscaping. Also an interesting layout for the coaster. Although I do think these curves might have looked even better if they were a bit less wide. But yeah, that's just a nitpick. Overall, I think this entry looks really good. Okay, here's the entry from Scoop. Now, Scoop made this junior coaster with a really long train. Now, I think he... no guests seem to be entering this coaster as we load the save file. So yeah, again, I don't think that's generally a good idea. It probably looks better if when someone opens the save file that the ride is full of guests and then just leaving the station. Because then when players open it, they can immediately start following the coaster. Also filled with guests in it, which just adds to the atmosphere, I think. Now, speaking of atmosphere, I really like the way this park looks here. These little shoestringed custom rides, I think they look really good. So here's a ride with some junior coaster trains going in one direction. This one has these spinning wild mouse cars. And there's another one with the other junior coaster trains, the log trains. Now, what I actually liked most about this entry was how we actually used all these different objects in this station. For example, he actually used these planks here on top of barrels. Now, you never see people use planks in their buildings. Well, maybe we will now in the future. But yeah, I think this is a really creative usage of objects. Also, the usage of these candy canes with gravestones to actually serve as lamps. I think that's really creative. So he uses these mushrooms as umbrellas. So yeah, for sure, a very creative usage of objects. Also the trees here look really good. Maybe to improve this entry even more, maybe some nice decorations here in the middle of the track would have looked nice. Okay, here's the entry from MoeBeezys. Very densely, very dense landscaping. The land is just covered in plants and trees. Also lots of coaster track here. Now, actually, one of the rules for this contest was that the junior coaster had to have continuous circuit, and MoeBeezys actually first entered with the track that's now used for these mine trains. So yeah, it has some switchbacks, so that's why I couldn't allow it, because it's not a continuous circuit. So what MoeBeezys then did was to simply reuse that track. He just put mine trains on it and put it in test mode, and then he shoehorned a junior coaster on top. That's also why it's called the Shoehorn Express. And that coaster now just does some circuits here through this dense jungle. So yeah, lots of little details here, lots of plants. I'm really a big fan of this entry. I love how it has all these plants, covering its sides. It's I don't think we've seen something like this before. Again, just lovely little details here throughout the entry. Some nice support here as well, although it is a little bit glitchy in some parts. Also, I really like how we use these caves, probably to connect this path to this path here. But yeah, very interesting entry for sure. Very unique. I haven't seen something like this before that I remember. Okay, here's the entry from Skorpion. Now, he made Marien Keverbaan from Seore. I think it's a recreation of an existing junior coaster, but I'm not sure. I think it looks quite interesting with this really long train. But yeah, the station is also made for that. Now, just like his other entries, this entry is just full of little details. I loved how he did the station with all these different track types and walls and poles, etc. Also, the queue area looks really good. Also here, a really nice mixture of fences. He even did a little cutout here of a log flume or a water coaster or a splash boat. I'm not really sure what it is. And even when you look here into the side of the wall, you can also see another cutout of another coaster. It's called Mine Train. So yeah, these names are all in German, so it's probably a recreation of a German park. But yeah, it's just so full of little details everywhere. This looks incredible. So, for example, these gardens are just a really nice mix of all these different flowers, trees, plants. The structure here under these splash boats, just a really cool mix of all these Egyptian scenery. Little waterfall here. There's just so much stuff to look at. No, I haven't said it yet in this video, but yeah, you can download all these entries and check them out for yourself. On my Discord, there's a channel called Mini Contest Archive, and there you can download all the entries. And take a look, because I cannot possibly cover all the details in this video, or else it would get very long. Okay, here's the entry from Lars DV. He made this coaster in a tropical setting. Now, I really enjoy the way this looks. These palm trees mix really well with these rocks and the brown path. It's very densely decorated. Again, lots of these Egyptian, these ruined statues and stone blocks. But yeah, I think they contrast really well with the brown floor that he used and also all the plants that surround it. I think this foliage is all done really well. It's also one of my favorite entries for sure. Also the station, it looks fantastic. Also love these little awnings here, the benches. It's nice to see the guests sit here on top of the building. Also this junior coaster layout, I think it's done really nicely. Just a nice mix of spirals, twisty track, traveling around the fountain here. Lots of path interaction. This is just a junior coaster done really well. Okay, here's the entry from Captain Blackadder. He made this coaster. It's based on a typical Dutch fairground. It's actually based on the yearly fairground of Tilburg. It's a big city in the Netherlands. So yeah, that's also why this coaster is situated here on the middle of a road. So it's one of those typical portable coasters called the Crazy Caterpillar Family Coaster. Kind of looks like one of those wacky worm coasters. Really simple layout, but quite enjoyable for the kids. Now it's also surrounded with these typical Dutch stores like Kruidvat, and he also named some of the Discord, some of the community members like Geoff and Jens. This is Jens Fashion. Here's the Swag Shack. So yeah, those are some fun little details. I also really love this, these arcade games that he made here. The Mega Cranes, Lucky Win, Top Prizes. So yeah, there's lots of cool little details here, and it also looks very Dutch. And of course, it's also really messy here, something you would typically see at the fairground. It's probably also the reason why. He actually has a handyman. But yeah, they're apparently not doing a very good job at cleaning. Okay, here's the entry from Whacked. Now, I really like this entry. Again, it's so full of detail. It's so dense with buildings. There's also some rocks and stuff in between, trees, plants, just little details everywhere. And that's how I like to see these entries. Now, also the junior coaster, it has a really interesting layout. Lots of tight turns, spirals, lots of interaction with the scenery. Also traveling quite close to the paths here for some interaction. It's beautiful little buildings wherever you look. There's a little boat here in fading canoe. This is for me. This was a really enjoyable entry. You can just look everywhere and keep discovering new things every time you look. So there's lots of cool little tricks and details throughout this entry. For example, here even a Virginia reel car was used as scenery. So all these little tricks make this entry really enjoyable to look at. So fantastic work from Whacked in this entry. Okay, here's the entry from Carp Runner. Now, what I really liked in this entry was also that he put in the story again in these custom news messages. I love when people do that. Now, before I continue, I should probably note that in the top 5 or top 10, the scores were all really close together. So really, every vote from everyone really mattered for the final score. Now, this entry, I really like the palette that was used here. I love this warm color of brown. I think it works really well for all these buildings. And yeah, I think the coaster also looks really good here. I love the colors of the track. So yeah, this entry is very brown, but I think it has some nice contrast also with the greens and also some of the lighter colors that were used here. Again, just small little details everywhere you look. Also a boat that believe it was inspired by the one that Ollie414 made in his mega park or a Disney resort or whatever it was. So yeah, just lovely little buildings throughout. Interesting layout for the junior coaster. The only thing I wasn't really fond of is this long diagonal section here. But of course it is necessary for it to return back to the station. What I do like is this final turnaround here around the statue. I think that's really cool. So yeah, this lovely entry and a really cool palette. Okay, here's the entry from Jens. Now once again he did a fantastic job here. He really does well in these contests lately, and this entry was no exception. Now actually first there was a little issue with this entry because he had made a palette, but it actually had the game automatically abbreviated it to 8 characters, and then it had the same name as a different palette. So when people loaded this park, it actually showed with the wrong palette. So yeah, that just goes to show that when you make a custom palette, you should always give it a unique name to prevent issues like this. Yeah, this I believe this is underwater. Not sure. It definitely looks like it. Now I think the palette here looks incredible. I love these colors. They this color of blue green. I think it contrasts really well with the yellow color that's used here. I also really love how the coaster travels throughout this land here. Some really nice interactions with the scenery, also with the path here. I really like the way all these little buildings look. That's done in a really nice way. The only thing I probably would have done a little bit different was to actually give the coaster also a green color like this. I think it makes it blend a little bit less into the landscape, rather than the color it used to have. I believe it was this color. So with the green, it's actually a little bit more visible. But of course, it's just a nitpick that I have. And of course, the park fence is still visible here. It's really easy to hide it, and I think that looks better. But yeah, once again, this is a fantastic entry. Really great buildings and a nice looking coaster as well. Okay, here's the entry from Enox. Now he got a really good score here. So yeah, he made this coaster called Slange van Midgard. I believe it was inspired by the coaster of the same name which is in Hansa Park, I believe. I actually rode that coaster. To be honest, not sure if it actually looks the same. Well, at least the scenery doesn't, but it's probably the track layout that does look the same. Yeah, these buildings here around the coaster, I think they look really good. Also for the coaster, I really like the way these supports look. These custom supports, I think they work really well. Also like that he actually made a snake, which the coaster also travels through. I really love this bridge that he made here. Looks really nice here with the towers and these suspension cables. And for the station of the building, I believe it's actually furnished on the inside. So you can actually see the guests queuing inside here. It's actually a bit of a show going on here. There's also some scenes here which play when the guests are over here. So yeah, again, just lots of cool little details here, and these buildings in this entry, they look really nice. Great work. Okay, then we get to the entry from Major Craving. So he made this junior coaster, which travels through this interesting landscape here. So yeah, first the junior coaster. I kind of like the catwalk he made around the lift hill of the coaster. I also really like the landscape it travels through. So it goes underground here, and here it pops out of the ground again. But there's still all this scaffolding around it, and it actually travels under this waterfall here. I think that's a really cool design. And then when it comes out, it travels through these two helixes, which go which I believe go in the opposite direction. But yeah, I think this is a really nice layout. So yeah, I like how it travels here under the waterfall, and when it pops out, yeah, it goes around these little buildings here, and these plants and these trees. That looks really nice. Also the station, I think it's done really well. There's even a bit of a display car here. Now, other than that, you can also see a little playground here with a swing set, and also one of these little slides here, climbing stuff for kids. Oh, and apparently I'm also here enjoying the swing set. Also here, he made a saloon. This building looks incredible. And there's even a train parked on the awning of this building. That's a funny design choice as well. Also the entrance of this park, I think it's also decorated really nicely. Also with the skull and these this stuff which looks like bones. So yeah, once again, just an entry chock full of little details, and I love little parks like these. Great job. Alright, now we get to the top 2 of the round. Now I will just first show both entries that got in the top 2, and then afterwards I will reveal which one won the round. So here we have the entry from Anda23. He made this junior coaster right in front of this huge organ. I just love the way this massive organ looks. It looks incredible. All these pipes here, all these details. I also love these two waterfalls that are on here. And if we rotate around, you can actually see the keys for it. I also love the way he did these candles and all these details on it. They are fantastic. And then right next to the organ, we have this junior coaster over here. So yeah, very compact layout. Let me quickly disable the rain again. So yeah, very compact layout. I really like the structure of the station. It's a very interesting support structure for the building itself. The layout of the junior coaster, I think it's a little bit of a mess. It's a big knot of track. And to be honest, I wished it would have interacted at least with this huge organ right next to it. Because right now it just looks like the backdrop. So yeah, some interaction between the coaster and the musical instrument would have been nice. But still, I think this is incredible work, and this is one of the most beautiful pieces of scenery and track texture that I've seen so far. Okay, and then here's the final entry that I'm going to show. This is the entry from Emil. Now he actually made a launched junior coaster. That's something you don't see often. Now, first off, I think it looks incredible. I love the support work he did here on these helixes. The layout, besides the launch, I think it's very interesting layout. It's nice and compact. I love all the rock work he did under it. And there's also some really nice details throughout the map. So here's a little train, here's a boat, it's Ulvenwood's pirate ship. And Ulvenwood is on top of it, drinking rosé. It looks like he had a little accident. And here you can see Dirklink's backyard, and there's some unspeakable acts of indecency going on here, which are probably not safe for YouTube. But yeah, I think this is a lovely entry. Just a really nice building here, really nice station. So a sign here in front saying Emil's Expedition. So yeah, a very unique entry in that it uses a launch, but it's very very nicely decorated. Yeah, it's a very complete entry. So yeah, I think now it's time to reveal which entry is the winner of this round. So, the winner of this round is... Sorry, let me retry that. The winner of this round is... Emil! So yeah, to be honest, I didn't expect this entry to win, but all the voters were really fond of this entry, and yeah, I'm actually happy that this entry won. Yeah, the scenery here is just done really well, and it doesn't rely on a huge structure or huge building in order to get a high score. So I'm actually happy about that. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching all these entries. I will start a new mini contest quite soon. If you want to join any of these contests, you can simply join them by becoming a member on my Discord. Discord is completely free. So yeah, I hope to see you join one of these in the future. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching all these entries, and I'll see you again in the next video. See you later.